when you're dealing with more sophisticated clients, or you're dealing with clients, particularly in the healthcare sector, they want you to be an advisor. They don't want you to be, a broker. And we use that term, broker and advisor, but I really hold myself out as an advisor. And yes, that leads to transactions, but more than anything, I want them to understand that I'm listening and I'm assessing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bryce Sylvester. I'm the managing director at Cushman & Wakefield CRESCO. Welcome to our mini-series focused on learning more from the brokers at CRESCO. I've been the managing director at CRESCO for a year and a half. It is such a privilege to talk so much to our brokers, but they happen in these mini conversations. It's in the hallway, it's a lot of phone time, it's the kitchen table, it's at happy hour, it's in an office. Those conversations are focused on tactics, strategies, how do I do business development better, complaining about a client, figuring out ways that we can better serve our clients. These are all tiny little conversations that I have put in my head, and I feel obligated to share them with you. Today is the first conversation of many that we're going to have with our brokers so that I can provide these conversations to the market. I could not be more thrilled with our first guest. Eric Schreibman is a CRESCO broker, and in 2025, he had his highest producing year ever. He was also CRESCO's top producing associate. So there isn't a better place to start than with Eric, who leads CRESCO's healthcare practice and has a ton of insight about what happened in the market in 2025 and what's happening in the market today. I hope you'll stick around with us for a few minutes and learn from Eric. I promise it's going to be an engaging conversation, and thanks for listening.
Let's go.
Eric, welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
This is our first discussion where I'm bringing out our CRESCO brokers to an audience to share how things have gone this past year, how things are going today. But I have to start with this. Huge year last year. Absolutely huge year. I believe it was your best year in brokerage ever, and you were the top producing CRESCO associate last year. So when you reflect on it, here's what everybody wants to know. How'd you do it, man?
Bryce, I wish I had a set answer for you. It's a cumulative effect, and it was my 14th year in brokerage. So I kind of smile about it and think, the first 13 years are the hardest. So if you get past those. But really, it is a cumulative thing, and just things start to click, and we have to get used to as agents, and just in general, the market undulating and ebbing and flowing through over time. So had a lot of good luck, but also just kind of capitalized on some bigger opportunities.
So I've been at CRESCO for a year and a half, and the business feels very much to me like a rhythm business. Like, you got to stay in rhythm. You can't be knocked off of your platform. A deal goes sideways or whatever the case may be in terms of a hurdle. But was there a moment last year, a deal came through or something happened where you just felt like, man, I'm really moving. I'm really cooking on my pipeline and my deals?
It's a great question. I think it's hard to pinpoint one juncture in time or one deal, but I think it's just exactly what you said, the ability to roll with punches and to start to build on a rhythm, having one deal lead to another, multiple situations where you have connecting dots. I talk a lot to some of the younger agents who I mentor about, a lot of this business is connecting those dots.
Yep.
And learning how one piece fits with another. And it may not be immediately, right? It takes time for those to get seasoned and developed. But I think that's really what it has been more recently in the last year to 2 years for me, is that better dot connection. More dots, more connections lead to more opportunities.
Was there anything that completely surprised you about last year, whether it was a deal or something that fell in your lap or otherwise?
I think as much as anything, it was just deals that if you see potential in a property or in a project, I think what surprised me is sometimes it's easy to give up on those things when they don't come to fruition early. I think that patience, I don't know if it was a huge surprise, but it was, I guess, a pleasant surprise in many ways to see kind of some larger projects that seemed to struggle for quite some time actually close. And one was the sale of the University Hospital's Richmond Heights campus,
right,
which was something that was multiple years in the making and finally closed last year. And when you think about selling a vacant hospital of that magnitude of multiple 100,000 square feet that's largely vacant, and which is a reuse of the facility for something other than really being a full inpatient hospital. You walk through the what can seem like a cavernous facility, and you're like, wow, how are we ever going to dispose of this? And I think that's kind of the surprise, is that even projects like that, if you take it on, kind of one step at a time and stay patient with it, it can pay off.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that project, and something similar has come up a lot in my seat when I hear from brokers, where it's like you assess an opportunity at face value when it comes up. So in that case, a tough asset to move, no doubt, or at least a difficult asset to move. Right. But along the way, that introduced you to some prospects that maybe you weren't considering when you first saw it at face value. So can you talk about how that evolution, the emotional evolution, happens? Like after you got the assignment, which was a few years ago, right, there are probably some days where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do to move this product. But then the lens, like ever so slightly, gets clearer along the way. Is that how you would describe it? Or
I think so. I think the lens feels like it's more clear. You start to assess who could be a legitimate user versus somebody that's truly just fishing. And in that instance, we started to see groups emerge that focused on things like psychiatric services, yeah, behavioral health, addiction recovery type of users that could reuse the bed tower. And I think that kind of thing, so as an example, I really had no experience in that field prior to that, but you right, start to learn. You spend 2 or 3 hours with somebody going through a facility like that, and then you start to understand what it is they're looking for, the contours of their business, and why this facility might make sense for them. So you do start to, again, going back to that, connecting the dots, yeah, thing, you see the dot of the facility connecting with that user, and that can then lead to, hopefully, come in the future, maybe more deals with those kinds of users.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about. It's that specific end user, but then you and I have discussed a lot, like how do we get more active with that client? Because that's not the only old hospital site that's in our market. In fact, right, there are plenty of them.
That's right.
And so you have figured out a way to be productive for those clients. And it took a few years to figure out. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Talk about some other things that like you repeat to yourselves as you start your day and your weeks. Other than patience, what comes to mind?
It's interesting. It's almost like a paradox, right? And there's patience, but you also have to treat, I think, days with urgency, right? So I'm patient with results, but I'm urgent with action and with moving things along. And I think that's really that blend of how you're treating your day. Be patient with, are we working toward a result that seems like it can occur? but what am I doing? What can I do? What is my urgent list of things that I can do today to help move that forward? Or to make a new connection that I think can help expand my business.
So build on that too, Eric, because I see you working your tail off when I'm doing my rounds throughout the office. But share with the audience, like, what does a day look like, or even a week? As you're showing up Monday morning, maybe you think about, like, how do I structure my week? Like, what does that look like for you?
That's a great question, Bryce. Obviously, some of our schedule, anyways, is tied up in showings and in meetings and in scheduled calls. And I think that, so those are kind of the rocks that maybe you can't move because those are scheduled things. But the key that I've found over the years has been to try to block off certain periods of time during a day or during a week to just do follow-up work, whether that's just phone calls, responding to emails, just being as proactive as I can be in communication. And I mean, that's really at the core of it. I feel like my most productive days are the days where I look back and I go, wow, those were 38 emails, and I look at my phone log and I'm like, wow, I made 14 phone calls, and we really there was a lot of communication. So that is, to me, kind of at the heart of what it produces for me.
Yeah. One thing that you and I have talked about a number of times is how best to prospect and do business development. So there's an approach for a broker where it's like, I'm going to cold call as many people as I can. And that can be a really effective strategy. But one thing that I really admire that you do is you really understand your, I'm going to call it like your professional tribe of people that you've done deals with or that you're focused on, whether that's like a new bank that we're trying to get into, an attorney that you've done deals with before. We talked about the Richmond Heights Hospital project. But talk to me about, how do you think about the prospecting thing? Is it less people and more times connecting with those people? Is it more people as much as I can? Or how do you think about that?
I think there's a varied answer to that, and it depends on your style and your personality. And I've definitely seen different ways to skin the cat from different brokers over the years. And I try to learn from different types of successful brokers and successful salespeople in general. How do they do it? For me, it's been more touches with fewer people, and trying to focus on building that rapport and that relationship with somebody, as opposed to just being more of a scattered approach and then trying to focus. I try to focus more early on in the process and be candid with myself and with the other person. Is this something that is going to lead to a more valuable relationship? And if so, then let's go down that path. And if not, that's fine, but not so much that a lot of scattered shots.
Yeah,
that's not how I've found my success.
Let's say one of those conversations leads to you getting introduced to a healthcare prospect, whether that's a company that's looking for tenant or buyer rep, or a UH scenario, or a healthcare practice that's got a building that they're looking to lease or dispose of. How do you differentiate yourself when let's say you got that introduction, you're talking to the person across the table? How do you sell yourself?
I don't feel a strong urge to sell myself, and I think a lot of brokers maybe overplay how much they know and what they feel the need to tell the prospect why they should pick their brokerage firm. And whereas my approach, having come from a legal background, I practiced law for about 6 years before I got into commercial real estate.
Smart move.
So it's worked out. There's things I miss about practicing law, but generally I know I made the right decision. But one of the I think it's the training, the legal training, that has helped me more than it was actually practicing law. So the legal training centers a lot around asking good questions, being a good listener, and really trying to understand the situation as opposed to telling the prospect everything I know, that hey, you should be impressed with me because I know this, that, and the other. No, more like, I want to really understand what it is that's going on with your situation. And I think that when you're dealing with more sophisticated clients, or you're dealing with clients, particularly in the healthcare sector, they want you to be an advisor. They don't want you to be, a broker. And we use that term, broker and advisor, but I really hold myself out as an advisor. And yes, that leads to transactions, but more than anything, I want them to understand that I'm listening and I'm assessing.
So let's keep advancing that discussion. So you have that conversation with that person, and it sounds like to me when you say that, Eric, it's a lot of trust building. You're building that relationship anchored in trust with that person. In addition to trust, are there other things that you hear often that clients in the healthcare space or otherwise that they value in addition to trust?
Sure. I mean, I think they want your expertise and they want your knowledge, but I think a lot of it is understanding that the process is fluid and uncertain, and that you're going to be there, for them, and kind of be somebody that's not necessarily just about the transaction, but is about sort of the understanding how the process is going to work, and being patient. So again, we come back to the patience, but be patient with the client, be rugged, and be urgent with your follow through. So I think. And so that builds trust. So it's related to the trust. But what on a tactical day-to-day level, that means I told you I was going to send you this floor plan. I'm on it. I'm getting the floor plan and I'm getting it to you. That may sound so simple, but I think a lot of brokers are great about talking and not as great with follow through.
Yeah. You have stepped up to coach some of the younger brokers at CRESCO, and one of the things I've heard from you a lot is drive it forward. So if there's an action item coming out of a Zoom call or an in-person call, take the initiative to demonstrate the ownership of that, albeit sometimes it's just small. But demonstrate to your client that you can trust me and I will carry this forward for you. And I know that sort of resonates with what you're saying.
Exactly.
So Eric, what is the marketplace telling you right now from a healthcare perspective? Everything from the dentist to the primary care doc, all the way up to a healthcare institution. What are you seeing?
I think from the biggest thing that I'm seeing from an actual space and environment perspective is the growing trend toward a more retail accessibility for all kinds of healthcare providers. The days of the 5 or 6 story traditional medical office building, they're not over, but I think that you are seeing that as more often than not a second option compared to can I have a space that's on a main road with direct street visibility and signage and access. So I'm seeing a lot of that at all levels, whether that's the health system or the solo dentist that just wants a couple thousand square feet for his practice. If he or she can get that with street visibility and accessibility, and we're not worried about going up elevators, that's a big trend space-wise that I'm seeing for sure.
On the retail side, let's say that there was a buyer or tenant rep situation where somebody was, Eric, we'd like to be in a retail center or strip center. Let's just say we're looking at our entire marketplace. What are some things that stand out to you on like good locations for that? Like I know they'll follow rooftops, they're gonna follow income, But are there other parallels, whether that's proximity to highways or things that stand out to you as you in your mind are trying to like deduce down into what could work? Like what goes through your head there?
I think you touched on a number of them in terms of the demographics and the community in which they're looking, as well as just it is very fundamental blocking and tackling stuff in our world. But yeah, I mean, of course, just traffic patterns,
Yep.
looking at just how easy is it to get in and out. Now, when you get into some of the minutia and intricacies of various practices, they may have specialized desires. Well, we have to be on an end cap, or we really need to be. We have a drive-through, and we have to have a drive-through, or those are kind of basic things that are kind of case by case. But I think that for the most part, we're seeing it's retail-oriented drivers.
Yeah.
And depending on the nature of the client, some of the health systems have very detailed patient population analyses and understanding where the best healthcare coverages are, from how many patients have the best healthcare insurance, and this is exactly where I want to be. But then there's other smaller providers that just will say, I know I need to be within 2 square miles of this particular location because this is where I drop my pin and I know where my patients are.
The other thing that comes up a ton, it's every asset class, every use, but let's say a prospective business owner that has a vacant former medical space, and you can define that however you like, but they approach CRESCO and they approach others on listing that space. What are some things that stand out to you about what's important inside that building? It can be whether it's clean rooms, whether recently built out, lighting. Is there stuff as you walk into that space for the first time that you're looking for and paying attention to?
Sure. I'll tell you, and this crosses over a little bit into the office asset class, but I'm always blown away at, unfortunately, the number of property owners that just don't take basic care of their properties. There's garbage strewn across commercial space, or there's lights are out, or there's broken ceiling tiles, and there's dead bugs along the windowsill. It sounds very basic and fundamental that you would think that you would never show your house like that. Why would you want to show an office space or a clinical space like that? That's kind of low-hanging fruit, simple stuff. But certainly, you're looking for clean, well-lit, well-powered, good window line, that kind of thing. Sometimes you get into the more detailed things. Is it sprinkled? Do we have access to a drive-through type of situation?
Yep.
There's a lot of elements that get into on the case-by-case scenario. But for me, more and more these days, you want good ceiling height, good lighting, good power, and then we'll figure out how to build it out from there.
Yeah.
A lot of times, it used to be the rule was, well, let's find something that's really got a lot of layout in place that you could reuse, and that does work, particularly on the office side. But on the healthcare side, I'm finding more and more you're probably best off to just have a really well-built, clean, open box.
Yep.
That can be built out to spec, because more often than not, there's something that will need to be changed and tweaked, and you're better off just starting with an open box than having to do the demolition and then do the build up.
Yeah, the other thing that I've watched you do too is when you're advising an owner and you're facing that question, it's how to be a good advisor to tell them what type of improvements to make. Because there are scenarios where an owner could spend the wrong money in a space if they're trying to attract a medical user. And you're able to deduce down and say, look, here's where I think the money is best spent to either white box this or gray box it, and this is why that makes sense. Is that fair? Is that a fair?
It is, for sure, and it's more art than science sometimes.
Yeah.
Trying to decide how to do that. It's easy for a broker to say you should spend all this money up front on the if come that this is how we're going to attract a tenant. But I think, that art comes with experience and seasoning, and knowing what users look for.
Yeah.
But I usually start with those fundamentals. I mean, can we make sure that it's clean? Can we make sure that everything is, maybe it's repainted, or we've got updated lighting in there, or at least the lights are functioning, that the common areas look clean and well attended to. I mean, there's no surer way to lose the interest of a top-notch health system client when they walk into your building and they see disarray, and they wonder, why are lights, if lights are out in the lobby, or we're touring in January and there's 6 inches of snow and it hasn't been taken care of. So there's a lot of stuff that's not exactly sexy stuff, but stuff that really matters.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you this. In the industrial space, the market is super tight, so vacancies is really low. And if I were to ask one of our industrial brokers, if you had the magic market wand and you could build anything to fulfill the needs that you have in your pipeline, right now there's just a ton of activity in that like 5 to 10,000 square foot. I need one dock. I don't need 32-foot clear. I need around 24-foot clear industrial space. I want it to be generally affordable, and I need it to be in a great location. If the industrial brokers could build as many of those boxes as possible, they would. Mm-hmm. If you had the magic market wand to build anything, forget about the math, forget about all that, what could you fill up if it were available more of?
I think I'd like more Rite Aids to go out of business.
Not just Rite Aid.
Not Rite Aid. Now we need CVS or Walgreens, which it's on the way with some of these. But I have found a lot of success in filling former drugstore type of boxes with clinical uses.
Interesting.
Because they're well located. They're usually on a signalized corner. They're somewhere between, call it maybe 9,000 and 12,000 feet, which is a little large for some practices, of course, but they can even be divided. They have a drive-through oftentimes, and the majority of these are somewhere between 20 and 25 years old, or 30 years old maybe, and so they're not super old. So yeah, if you were talking about new construction, yeah, building something like that in a well-populated area, that's going to move.
Interesting. Okay, so if our audience has a hard corner somewhere in a Rite Aid or CVS or Walgreens type of asset, right, you're the guy to call.
Right, or even a dollar store, a freestanding dollar store. I mean, just in general, that sort of smaller retail box that's well located, we're seeing a lot of success with those conversions to clinical.
Cool. All right. I'm going to change gears on you for a second, and I'm going to ask for rapid fire answers on this. Now, you haven't seen these questions, I don't think, but I'm looking for I'm just looking for your raw reaction to it. You can, a sentence or two, but nothing more than that. Is that fair?
Okay, I'll do my best.
All right. Okay, first one is the office market. Is there a comeback, or is it forever changed?
Yes and yes. Forever changed, but it is coming back.
You cheated a little bit there. I was looking for you to pick one. Good answer.
Well, that's the broker. That's
the broker.
Or that's the attorney in me. I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit of both.
Both.
If you'd let me expand, I'm glad to. But if we can move on to the next fair. Rapid fire.
Well played. Well played. All right. Second one. Cold calling. Dead or still one of the best tools?
Closer to dead than one of the best tools, in my opinion.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
I believe in it, but it's more. It's still pretty lower on the list for me of effective ways to generate business.
Got it. All right, last one. Early riser or night owl?
As I've gotten a little bit more mature and older in the tooth, if you will, longer in the tooth, more of a night owl, actually, in terms of just responding to emails and catching up on things. The sort of before bedtime seems to be good, but I also enjoy the early rise too.
Yeah.
I think those are the two of the better times.
Look at you answering both for all of these.
I'm sorry. Maybe I should go into politics. I don't know.
I love it. Eric, what about, I mentioned earlier that you play a role in coaching some younger brokers in the office.
Yes.
Advice to your younger self. Let's say you're 3 years into the business. What would you tell that version of Eric today?
Wow, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to think about in that regard. But I think, generally speaking, you're playing the long game, and you have to stay patient with results and looking ahead. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to get bad breaks. Deals are going to fall apart that you were totally convinced were going to happen. You're going to lose out on clients that you really thought you connected with. All those things are going to happen. So you have to really learn how. I think it's a mindset shift that you really have to be able to accept the ebb and flow of our business. You know, I came to this business, after 6 years of being a practicing attorney, and then several years at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in the real estate department. So being in a corporate setting. So, I didn't come to brokerage until I was about 40 years old. So, but even with that, even with all that professional experience, there was really nothing like the ups and downs of brokerage, knowing that, you do a great job, but it just doesn't work out, and it's a zero. It's not, here's, a lower paycheck, or here's, a nice bonus that you did for your effort. It's a zero. So I think just that mindset of being able to ride those waves, to be okay with, if I'm doing the right things, the reward's going to come. Easy to say, very hard to do, but if you don't do it, I think you put yourself in jeopardy of just kind of fizzling out.
Yeah.
So that's the general mindset. I think specifically, tactically, it really is spending as much time as you can truly learning, and that's obviously a broad statement, but learning the market, learning about people, getting out there. I would imagine in today's world, it's so easy to get stuck behind the desk and to do everything online, and to be, I'm going to do research online. I'm going to send emails, or I'm going to be on social media. We still live, and real estate certainly lives and breathes in a very physical world. Getting out there and actually physically seeing, driving markets, seeing what's going on, is a big thing. And I think that's something that I wish I had done even more of when I first got started. Was truly just touch and feel the real estate, get out there, drive it, understand, hey, why is that building totally vacant, and what's going on here? You can't really assess that as much online as when you get out there and see what's happening in the context of the neighborhood in which a property sits.
The best brokers in our shop, you've been in it for 14 years,
Yes.
right? 14. Team members that have been in it for 20 plus, 30 plus. I'll tell you the one thing that I know for sure is consistent is that commitment to continuous learning. I mean, you'll talk to some of the older guys in our office and they're like, I still don't have this figured out.
Right.
And I think that's such a crucial thing for a young broker to know, that somebody with 30 years in it is still trying to figure that out. So that makes a ton of sense.
Sure. I remember one of our founding partners told me, when I asked him, how do you figure out, the clients that you really want to work with versus the ones that sound great,
yes,
but don't. And he said, I don't know, you tell me when you got it figured out. And I said, if this guy hasn't figured it out after 30 years with the success he's had, then I don't feel so bad.
Eric, this has been so fun. Why don't you share with the audience, is there anything that you're really excited about working on right now, or trend in the market, or just anything that's just generally exciting for you in your portfolio?
I really enjoy working with new clients, learning about their businesses, learning about their buildings, their properties. It's probably the most fun part of it is really kind of just getting started and really understanding what they're about, that exploration process. I am lucky enough to be able to work on both the landlord side and on the tenant side. I think that's the best way to work, to understand how a market really functions, is to be on both sides of the equation. So I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I'm enjoying. I'm just enjoying more and more kind of that, call it a late career resurgence, and the old dog and new tricks. So having fun with it.
Many, many more years to come, my friend.
Thank you.
Eric, thanks for sitting down with me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. For those of you that have joined us today, thank you for hanging on with us. We're thrilled to bring this content to you. If you have any questions about the healthcare market space, please reach directly out to Eric and our firm. We are here to help. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Eric.